Well, hello and welcome to our Bible talk for today. Lovely to see you, and welcome again from the amazing city of Kuala Lumpur and the Cathedral Church of St Mary's here in this incredible city. I've been here on retreat for the last couple of weeks, spending some time with some wonderful Christian people in a very, very different context, some incredibly wise, incredibly faithful and wonderfully godly people. It's been a real joy to be here. But welcome again from the Cathedral Church of St Mary's in KL. Like all good cathedrals, of course, it has its bookshop, and you just put my finger there, every cathedral has a bookshop, and that's the cathedral sort of behind me here. If you look in the distance, you can see the amazing buildings, and that one there, just in the background, that is the KL Tower, one of the tallest buildings in the world. So I thought, as I'm here, I'll bring you another Bible talk from here this morning. And we're continuing our adventure through the remarkable book of Exodus. And today we're in chapter 16. So here we are, Exodus chapter 16. I hope you can hear me. They set out from Elim, and all the congregation of the people of Israel came to the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month after they departed from the land of Egypt. And the whole congregation of the people of Israel grumbled against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. And the people of Israel said to them, "Would that we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the meat pots and ate bread to the full. For you have brought us out into this wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger." Then the Lord said to Moses, "Behold, I am about to rain bread from heaven for you, and the people shall go out and gather a day's portion every day, that I may test them whether they will walk in my law or not. On the sixth day, when they prepare what they bring in, it will be twice as much as they gather daily." So Moses and Aaron said to the people of Israel, "At evening you shall know that it was the Lord who brought you out of the land of Egypt, and in the morning you shall see the glory of the Lord, because you heard your grumbling against the Lord. For what are we that you should grumble against us?" And Moses said, "When the Lord gives you the evening meat to eat, and in the morning bread to the full, because the Lord has heard your grumbling that you grumble against him, what are we? Your grumbling is not against us, but against the Lord." Then Moses said to Aaron, "Say to the whole congregation of the people of Israel, come near before the Lord, for he has heard your grumbling." And as soon as Aaron spoke to the whole congregation of the people of Israel, they looked towards the wilderness, and behold, the glory of the Lord appeared in the cloud. And the Lord said to Moses, "I have heard the grumbling of the people of Israel. Say to them, at twilight you shall eat meat, and in the morning you shall be filled with bread. Then you shall know that I am the Lord your God." In the evening, quail came up and covered the camp, and in the morning dew lay around the camp. And when the dew had gone up, there was on the face of the wilderness a fine flake-like thing, fine as frost on the ground. When the people of Israel saw it, they said to one another, "What is it?" For they did not know what it was. And Moses said to them, "It's the bread that the Lord has given you to eat. This is what the Lord has commanded. Gather of it, each one of you, as much as you shall eat. You shall take an omer, according to the number of the persons that each of you has in his tent." And the people of Israel did so. They gathered, some more, some less. And when they measured it into an omer, they gathered much, nothing left. Beg your pardon. And when they measured it with an omer, whoever gathered much had nothing left over, and whoever gathered little had no lack. Each of them gathered as much as they could eat. And Moses said to them, "Let no one leave any of it over till the morning." But they didn't listen to Moses. Some left part of it till the morning, and it bred worms and stank. And Moses was angry with them. Morning by morning they gathered of it each as much as he could eat. But when the sun grew hot, it melted. On the sixth day they gathered twice as much bread, 2 omers each. And when all the leaders of the congregation came and told Moses, he said to them, "This is what the Lord has commanded. Today is a day of solemn rest, a holy Sabbath to the Lord. Bake what you will bake, and boil what you will boil, and all that is left over lay aside to be kept till the morning." So they kept it aside until the morning, as Moses commanded them, and it did not stink, and there were no worms in it. Moses said, "Eat it today, for today is a Sabbath to the Lord. Today you will not find it in the field. 6 days you shall gather it, but on the 7th day, which is the Sabbath, there will be none." On the 7th day some of the people went out to gather, but they found none. And the Lord said to Moses, "How long will you refuse to keep my commandments and my laws? See, the Lord has given you the Sabbath. Therefore on the 6th day he gives you bread for 2 days. Remain each of you in his place, let none of you go out of his place on the seventh day. So the people rested on the seventh day. Now the house of Israel called its name manna. It was like coriander seed, white, and the taste of it was like wafers made with honey. Moses said, "This is what the Lord has commanded. Let an omer be kept throughout your generations, so they may see your bread, the bread which I fed you in the wilderness. I brought you out of the land of Egypt." And Moses said to Aaron, "Take a jar and put an omer of manna in it, and place it before the Lord to be kept throughout your generations." As the Lord commanded Moses, so Aaron placed it before the testimony to be kept. The people of Israel ate the manna 40 years, till they came to a habitable land. They ate the manna till they came to the border of the land of Canaan. An omer is a 10th part of an ephah. And this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Well, my friends, many things I could say about this reading this morning. So the people have been set free, and and yesterday when they wanted water and it was bitter, so the Lord made it sweet. And here today they complain that they're hungry, and they complain to Moses, now their representative. But Moses and Aaron point out quite rightly, it's their Lord they're really complaining about. They're really saying, "Lord, have you looked after us?" And they moan, and as they moan, they kind of wish that they were back as it was before. They wish they were back in slavery. And they wish in lots of ways that they thought it was better, almost, "I wish you'd kept us in our captivity and not set us free." How must the Lord have felt about that? But I think it's interesting, isn't it, that we all moan from time to time, don't we? And we all moan that sometimes people who aren't Christians seem to be doing better than we do, and so on and so on and so on. And it's easy for us sometimes to moan and groan and say to God, "Why did God have you done this?" And we'd better if you left us as we were. And sometimes people less godly than us seem to do really well, and we seem to struggle. And don't we all wish like that sometimes? So I think this is a demonstration really of the human condition, and that it's right to acknowledge actually that we all feel like that sometimes, don't we? And if we're honest, we all moan with God, and we all wrestle with God, and we struggle with God, and we moan at God sometimes. And the people of Israel did then, as we do now. So first acknowledge that happened, and we all go there sometimes. Secondly, God replies, and God gives them bread to eat. I feel a hymn coming on, Bread of Heaven. God gives them bread to eat, and flesh in the form of quails as well. God feeds them. And what's interesting actually is when the food comes down, the people of God say, "What is this? Well, what is? We don't know what it is." And Moses and Aaron interpret it for them. Moses and Aaron said, "This is the food that God has given you." And I think so often that this is the task of the church really, is that God is good, and people often say, "Where is God? And what's going on here? And what's going on in the world?" And so on and so on and so on. And it's part of the role of the church to interpret what God is doing. So God is doing. So the people that had this bread and this flesh came from heaven, and they didn't know what it was. And Moses was there to tell them. I mean, I remember a young man years ago who told me that he was a garage mechanic. He'd been sitting in his garage one day, and he felt a hand on his shoulder, and he didn't know what he was. And I was able to tell him it was the hand of God on his shoulder, and he became a Christian after that. So it's the role of the church really to interpret what God is doing. And when God is good, to tell people that he's to interpret what God is doing now. He did then, and they do now. The third thing is that the people of God are told very clearly that they are fed for each day, and they're not to store it, but they're to feed it. And of course, they get extra get double lot on the Sabbath day, of course, because on the Sabbath day they're not supposed to work. And it's really about us depending on God today, keeping our faith alive, and not just looking back to glory days of the past and so on. I mean, it is good to look back at this and remember what God's done in the past, but our faith needs to be fresh every morning. We say in the Lord's Prayer, "Give us today our daily bread." And of course, that for these people here must have been, a life and death situation. Give us today our daily bread for today. And our faith needs to be new and fresh every day, as it was for them, and it is for us now. We need to pray that God would give us each day our daily bread, and that we need to depend on God and remember that we depend on Him, and ask God each day to give us what we need for each day. But one final thing, of course, about this is looking forward several thousand years to when Jesus was on earth. And Jesus was also out in the desert, and he had a crowd of 5,000 men and associated women and children as well. And the disciples said, these people are hungry, and Jesus fed them bread in the wilderness, as God had done all these years before here with Moses. So God fed his people in the desert then, and so God does today too. It's interesting. It was like flaky stuff. I mean, it reminds me very much of communion bread, and that we need to keep, my friends, keep receiving the sacrament, keep feeding on the bread of heaven, and feeding on the living bread, you might say. And as God fed his people in the desert, and with Moses, so God fed his people in the desert in Jesus, and so God feeds you and I today. But we need to make sure that we keep looking and receiving and feeding on the living bread today. That our faith should be fresh every morning, not always looking back to the past, but actually looking and receiving on God, what God is doing, what God is saying, and what God is providing today. And not just ourselves, but actually showing others what God is doing in the world today. My friends, thank you so much for watching. Welcome again from the amazing Cathedral Church of St Mary's, Kuala Lumpur. I hope you are well and cheerful. God bless you. Thank you for watching.